to our August novel night. We're so pleased to have you here at Malvern Books. Thank you all so much for coming and for supporting us and for seeing these two great readers, so this will be a lot of fun. First of all, we're going to be hearing from Donna. Donna Dechen Birdwell is an anthropologist whose curiosity about what makes human beings tick propelled her to travel widely, listening to stories of many different cultures, and eventually coming up with a few of her own. As a writer, her intention is to take readers on a lively adventure and leave them with something to think about. Donna is an artist, poet, and photographer, as well as a novelist. She holds a Ph.D. in anthropology from Southern Methodist University and previously taught at Lamar University in Beaumont, Texas. She now writes, paints, and photographs in Austin. Please join me in welcoming Donna.
Thank you very much, Becky, and thank you to Malvern Books for all the wonderful things that you do to support the literary community here in Austin. I think I may need to move the light just a little closer. Is that okay?
Sure.
So I can actually, I haven't got this whole thing memorized.
Oh, that's all right. I wouldn't expect you to. Can you see okay with that?
That's fabulous, absolutely. So I had a friend ask me online, he said, what do you always read the same thing when you give a book reading? And I was like, well, from my vast experience in giving book readings. This is only like 3 times that I've read anything from this book at all, so it's kind of not a very large sample of experience. But I'm going to go ahead and begin at the beginning, because what I'd really like to do more than anything else tonight is to get you interested in what I've written, so that maybe you'll feel like you want to read a little bit more of it. So I'm beginning part 1, Eternal Youth Disrupted. Chapter 1. The cafe was down a couple of side streets in an area of Dallas Jenda never went to. But she thought she might have been to the cafe once before. She couldn't remember. Without looking at the menu, she ordered a grilled cheese sandwich with fried potatoes and sweet tea. It was plain food, but she liked it. She was halfway through her meal, savoring the anonymity afforded by this out-of-the-way eatery as much as the greasy food, when she noticed the woman who had turned on her stool at the cafe's counter to stare. The woman was old. That in itself was disturbing. Nobody got old anymore. Not since Chulel, the drug that prevented aging, had come on the market 100 years ago. Jenda, at 111, was as fresh and vigorous as she had been in 2035, when at the age of 22, she had received her first annual Chulel treatment. Jenda's grandmother was 165, but appeared no older than she had when she began taking Chulel in her mid-60s. What was this old woman doing in Jenda's world? Jenda turned away, but she could still feel the woman's dark eyes boring into her, probing. Jenda couldn't help herself. She looked again. When the woman saw her looking, she smiled. Zujo, Jenda swore, quickly returning her attention to her unfinished sandwich. It was too late. Taking the smile as an invitation, the woman dropped down from her counter stool and shuffled over to Jenda's table. "You're Jenda Swain," she said, cocking her head to one side and narrowing her eyes. "God, you look the same as you did in high school." "Excuse me?" Jenda sat up straighter and used her best business voice. "Of course you don't remember," the woman said, dragging out the chair across from Jenda and sitting down heavily. "Nobody remembers much of anything anymore." She shrugged and looked down at her hands. Jenda looked too. The woman's hands were wrinkled, misshapen, and covered in brown and red splotches. "I remember you, though," she continued, looking up into Jenda's face. My God, you were a firebrand back then. I idolized you and your boyfriend, you know. Such temerity, the things you did. The woman refused to turn away. Do you still paint? You always had your mom's gift for art. I think you must have made some mistake, Jenda said, quietly, fighting to modulate her voice against the tightening in her throat. You may know my name, but you clearly don't know me. Nothing you are saying makes any sense at all. Jenda felt her cheeks warm as she flashed on an image of herself with an easel and paintbrush. Her last bite of sandwich seemed to have lodged somewhere near the base of her esophagus. Now, would you please go on your way and leave me alone? Jenda blinked, shuddering herself away from this intrusive presence. The woman's face clouded, and she leaned forward, looking Jenda squarely in the eye. You need to ask more questions. She spoke the words clearly and forcefully. Then she pushed her chair away from the table with a loud scraping noise. As she leaned over to pick up the leather bag she had dropped under the chair, the pendant around her neck clanked on the tabletop. It was an old-fashioned timepiece, the kind with a round face with numbers and moving hands. Jenda reflexively reached up to grasp her own necklace, a cluster of plexiform flowers in the latest style from her favorite recyclables boutique. The woman took in a deep breath as if rising from the chair had taxed her strength. She looked at Jenda again. You're the one who doesn't know who Jenda Swain is. Her voice was gentle, maybe sad. Then she turned and walked out the front door. It goes on from here. What we have basically is, a woman who is suddenly confronted by the fact that literally she doesn't know who she is, doesn't know her own past, and she is set on a course to find out. So, I can read a little bit more, I can answer questions, and just in case anybody is uncertain and doesn't think they have any questions, here are some suggestions. There's nothing like that awkward silence when you sit around waiting for people to ask questions and everybody's thinking, well, I could, So, what I really prefer is a question you come up with, because these are things I've already given at least a little thought to, and I love being surprised.
Yeah,
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
When you're writing this alternate reality and you're thinking of new words and new names that are just, what's your process for coming up with original names and curse words?
Well, I don't know. Sometimes things just kind of come to me. Sometimes I have found it really fun. I have a 1947 thesaurus that actually has some old, no longer used words in it. And sometimes those can be very useful to revive them because they actually do have a meaning that can be associated with, something. Cool. The curse word I made up out of thin air. It felt good to say it, and I thought, wow, that would be a really useful. And I tried not to put too many new words into it, just enough to keep the reader reminded that this is a different world and a different time. So hopefully I've not done too much of it, and hopefully I've put them in there in such a way that it's clear what they mean after only a couple of uses.
For clarity, what the drug that you mentioned, what was its purpose?
Its purpose was to arrest the aging process. As we learn in chapter 2, this is not a spoiler, it's all in chapter 2. It was invented by a couple of chemists and researchers who initially started working on a cure for progeria, which progeria is the disease that causes premature aging in children. And their daughter had died of progeria, and so they had come up with this drug to cure progeria, but it had other applications that were quite profitable for the company. Yes?
How did you come up with the idea for all the different corporations that are in the book?
Well, if anybody's looked at my t-shirts over there that I have logos for all the different corporations that I created for my book. And what you have to understand is that the corporations are extremely important in this book, because this is a world in which governments are almost insignificant, hardly mentioned, because they have absolutely no power. Everything is run by the corporations. They're in total control of everything. So obviously, we need some drugs. I mean, the drug Chulel. There's another wonderful drug that I have in my book called Dormata, which is a sleeping aid that has been calibrated to give exactly 20 minutes of dream-free sleep for each tablet, so that you can decide exactly how much you want to sleep, and there you are. Yeah. So some of the names actually do have meaning. You can Google it when you get home, but Pharmacon is one of those. That's the big pharmaceutical corporation. Others were just fun, and I think probably should be picked up by real companies. For example, Chat Square, for a sort of FaceTime or Skype-like thing. Chat with a little square sign on the top of it. I liked that one.
So did you patent that logo so that they can buy it from you?
Absolutely. Note. What else? What else would you like to? I don't know how much time I have, so just signal me when it's time. Maybe one more question?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
So Donna, you are an artist
Yes.
as well. So
Yes.
what inspired you to start writing fiction?
Well,
When was the moment that kept tugging at you?
It's really interesting because it really wasn't an artist until after I escaped from my academic career. And initially my art was all abstract, and I loved it. I was so sick of being embedded in words and words and words and more words, and with increasingly vague meanings. So the abstract art was just, it was such a release. But a couple of years ago, I noticed I started to want to put figures in my paintings. And my paintings started becoming a little more narrative. And I think it was just a logical transition to go from the more figurative, narrative style of painting to actually sitting down and telling a whole story. So, thank you very much, Becky. And